turkey was perfect, golden and crispy, sitting in the center of my dining table. I'd spent 3 days preparing everything for Thanksgiving dinner. My son Andrew sat across from me while his wife Brittany picked at her food with a bored expression. Their 5-year-old daughter Ellie was the only one who seemed happy. "Well, this stuffing is interesting," Brittany said, raising an eyebrow. She turned to my sister Carol with a fake smile. "Linda always goes for the budget option, store-brand everything." The table went quiet. My cheeks burned, but I kept eating. Brittany stood up with her wine glass, tapping it with her fork. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced, "to family traditions, even the affordable ones." She looked directly at me. "I just hope little Ellie doesn't inherit that poor person mentality, Andrew said nothing. He just stared at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. The silence stretched forever. Finally, I excused myself and walked to the guest bathroom. I wasn't crying. I was calculating. Sitting on the closed toilet seat, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The screen showed my latest wire transfer, $3,200 to Pinnacle Mortgage Services, the same amount I'd been sending every month for 5 years. Andrew and Brittany had no idea. When Andrew lost his job at the warehouse, he came to me desperate. Brittany was pregnant with Ellie, and they were about to lose their house. "Mom, we need help," he'd whispered, too ashamed to look me in the eye. So I helped, quietly, every single month. I scrolled through my payment history, 60 payments, over $190,000 of my retirement savings. I'd kept working at the post office 2 extra years just to afford it. Brittany thought they were managing on her clinic salary and Andrew's odd jobs. She had no clue. The mortgage was in Andrew's name, but I was listed as a co-signer. I still had all the documents in my filing cabinet at home. Every payment, every wire transfer, every receipt, all carefully organized and documented. I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. "Cheap," I whispered. "We'll see about that." Monday morning, I called Pinnacle Mortgage Services. "I need to stop my automatic payments," I told the representative. "Effective immediately." "Are you sure, Mrs. Coleman? You've been consistent for 5 years." "I'm sure." The next day, Brittany called Andrew screaming. I could hear her voice through his phone from across my kitchen. "The bank says we're behind on the mortgage. This has to be a mistake." Andrew's face went pale. He stepped outside to finish the call, but I watched through the window as he paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. "Mom, there seems to be some kind of bank error with our mortgage. Can you help us figure it out?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "I think it's time you two handled it yourselves." He called immediately. "What do you mean? Mom, we really need your help here." "Andrew, you're a grown man with a family. Surely you can manage your own finances." The line went quiet. Then he hung up. 3 days later, Brittany showed up at my front door with a gift bag and her sweetest fake smile. "Linda, I brought you some leftover pie from the bakery where I volunteer." I knew she didn't volunteer anywhere, but I let her in anyway. She settled on my couch like she owned the place, looking around my modest living room with barely hidden disdain. "I've been thinking about Thanksgiving," she said, pulling out a store-bought apple pie. "Maybe I came across a little harsh, but honestly, Linda, you can be so unreliable sometimes." "Unreliable?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Well, like with this mortgage thing. Andrew says you can't help figure out the bank error. That's not very family-oriented, is it?" I smiled and said nothing. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Brittany huffed and stood up. "Fine, be that way." She stormed toward the door, muttering under her breath about selfish people and family loyalty. As the door slammed, I noticed something glinting on my coffee table. Her phone. She'd forgotten it in her dramatic exit. The screen lit up with notifications. One caught my eye. MedReimburse account. Transaction processed. $847.50. I'd worked in hospital administration for 15 years before transferring to the post office. I recognized that notification. MedReimburse was the system used by private clinics to process patient insurance claims. Brittany worked as a billing coordinator at Westside Family Clinic. My curiosity got the better of me. I called my old colleague Maggie, who still worked in medical billing oversight. "Maggie, it's Linda Coleman. I have a quick question about reimbursement protocols." Linda, good to hear from you. What's up? If someone processes a claim for, say, $500 but reports it as $350 to the insurance company, where does that extra money go? Maggie paused. Well, it shouldn't happen. That would be considered fraud. The full amount should go to the clinic, and they pay the employee their salary separately. Why? Just curious about a case I heard about. After hanging up, I stared at Brittany's phone. More notifications kept popping up. All from MedReimburse. All for different amounts. All processed after hours. I'd found something much bigger than a bank error. But I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Andrew came over the following weekend. He looked tired, older somehow. His usual cheerful demeanor was gone, replaced by a tense, worried expression. Mom, we really need to talk about this mortgage situation, he said, sitting heavily in my kitchen chair. Brittany's been calling the bank every day. They keep saying the payments just stopped. I poured him coffee and sat across from him. Andrew, can I ask you something? When was the last time you looked at your actual mortgage statements? He shifted uncomfortably. Brittany handles all that stuff. She's better with numbers. But it's your name on the loan. I know, but... He trailed off, staring into his coffee cup. Things have been hard since I lost the warehouse job. Brittany says I'm not reliable with financial stuff anymore. My heart ached for him. Honey, do you remember what happened when Ellie was born? When you thought you'd lose the house? Andrew's face flushed red. He couldn't meet my eyes. As he stood to leave, he stopped at the door. I thought you'd support your family, Mom. Guess I was wrong. Those words stung, but not as much as watching my son walk away. Defeated. Monday morning, I called my lawyer, Margaret Torres. We'd worked together when I bought my house 20 years ago. Linda, what can I do for you? I need to update my will, completely. An hour later, I sat in Margaret's office, signing papers. My house, my savings, my pension, everything would go into a trust for Ellie. Andrew would be the trustee, but only if he met certain conditions. Brittany would inherit nothing. Are you sure about this? Margaret asked. It's pretty dramatic. I'm sure. I want to make certain I don't die a fool. Margaret raised her eyebrows but didn't ask questions. She'd been practicing law long enough to know family drama when she saw it. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in years. For too long, I'd been the family safety net, catching everyone when they fell. But safety nets work both ways. They can also trap you. Just making sure I protect what matters most, I whispered, clutching the signed documents. I started pulling back from family obligations. When Andrew called asking if I could babysit Ellie, I politely declined. When Brittany hinted about needing help with groceries, I changed the subject. When they invited me to dinner, I had other plans. Brittany noticed immediately. I heard through my neighbor that she'd been complaining to her friends at the coffee shop. Andrew's mom is being so jealous and petty, she'd said. She's playing the victim because I called out her cheap Thanksgiving. The funny thing was, I felt more peaceful than I had in years. No more midnight anxiety about their bills. No more checking my bank balance to make sure I could cover their expenses. No more walking on eggshells around Brittany. Then Maggie called me. Linda, you should hear what one of my friends told me. She knows your daughter-in-law, and apparently Brittany's been saying some pretty harsh things about you around town. Like what? That you're selfish, that you pretend to be poor but actually have money hidden away. She seems pretty angry. Interesting, I said. Very interesting indeed. 2 weeks later, Andrew's phone rang at 8 a.m. I know because he called me right after, panic in his voice. Mom, that was the bank. They're saying we're 2 months behind on the mortgage. They're starting foreclosure proceedings. I could hear Brittany screaming in the background. Something about incompetent bank employees and demanding to speak to managers. Oh my, I said calmly. That sounds serious. Serious? Mom, we could lose our house. Ellie could lose her home. Have you tried calling the bank to work out a payment plan? We don't have the money for a payment plan. We barely have money for groceries. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 5 years, I'd been their invisible financial guardian angel. Now they were discovering what their real financial situation looked like. I'm sure you'll figure something out, I said. You're resourceful people. That evening, I checked my email. Pinnacle Mortgage had sent me a notice as the co-signer. property at 423 Maple Street has been listed for foreclosure proceedings. Please contact us immediately. I deleted the email and went to bed. Instead of calling the bank, I called the county recorder's office. I need to verify the ownership information on a property, I told the clerk. Address? 423 Maple Street. I show Andrew Coleman as primary owner, Linda Coleman as co-owner. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. My name was still on the deed. In all the chaos of Andrew's job loss and Ellie's birth, we'd never removed me from the title. Legally, I owned half that house. And since I'd been making the payments, I had even stronger legal standing. I scheduled a meeting with a real estate attorney for the next day. If Brittany wanted to play games about who was cheap and who was reliable, I'd show her exactly how the game was played. Margaret had recommended James Morrison, a specialist in property law. His office overlooked the river, and his rates probably cost more than Brittany made in a week. This is a complex situation, he said after reviewing my documents. But your position is quite strong. You're a co-owner who's been making payments on a defaulted mortgage. You have several options. What kind of options? He smiled. Let me explain. Brittany spent the next week frantically applying for loans. Personal loans, home equity loans, anything to catch up on the mortgage. But her credit was terrible. Something about maxed out credit cards and missed car payments. Andrew told me later that she'd screamed at him for 3 hours straight, blaming him for everything. If you hadn't lost your job, we wouldn't be in this mess. She'd yelled. If you weren't so useless with money, we'd have savings. Andrew had finally snapped back. Maybe if you weren't spending $200 a week on your nails and clothes, we'd have savings. That night, Andrew's car pulled into my driveway at 11 p.m. Through my window, I watched him sit there for 10 minutes before getting out. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world. When he knocked, his eyes were red. Mom, can we talk? I made tea while he sat at my kitchen table, head in his hands. Whatever had happened at home, it was bad. I don't know what to do anymore, he whispered. Everything's falling apart. I sat down across from him. Then maybe it's time to tell you the truth. Andrew broke down completely. 5 years of shame and fear came pouring out. How he'd felt like a failure when he lost his job. How Brittany had pressured him to lie about their finances to family and friends. How he'd been working 3 part-time jobs just to buy groceries, while she spent money like they were rich. I felt so stupid, Mom. Like I couldn't provide for my family. Brittany kept saying I was worthless, that I was dragging her down. My heart broke for him. Andrew, you're not worthless. You're not a failure. But I lost our house. I can't even keep a roof over my daughter's head. I reached across the table and took his hand. Honey, you didn't lose the house. I've been paying for it this whole time. His face went through a dozen emotions. Confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally understanding. What do you mean? I got up and retrieved my file folder from the kitchen drawer. Bank statements, wire transfer receipts, mortgage documents. 5 years' worth of evidence. I've been sending $3,200 to Pinnacle Mortgage every month since Ellie was born. You never lost the house, Andrew. I've been saving it. I showed Andrew everything, every payment, every document, every receipt. His name was on the deed, but mine was too. And since I'd been making the payments, I had considerable legal rights. You've been paying our mortgage for 5 years? Yes. That's over $190,000. Yes. Andrew stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. But Brittany thinks we've been managing on our own. She thinks you're poor. I know what she thinks. Mom, she can never find out about this. Please, if she knew I'd been lying about our finances this whole time. The front door slammed. Brittany's voice echoed through the house. Andrew, where are you? Your car's here. Andrew's face went white. She wasn't supposed to come here. Footsteps approached the kitchen. I quickly gathered the papers, but Brittany appeared in the doorway before I could hide them completely. There you are, she said, her voice artificially sweet. I was worried when you didn't come home. But her eyes were scanning the table, taking in the scattered documents. Brittany walked into my kitchen like she owned it, her designer purse slung over her shoulder. She'd been shopping. I could see the boutique bags in her hands. What's all this paperwork? She asked, trying to sound casual. Andrew fumbled with the documents. Just stuff about the house. I was still holding the mortgage statements when I said, "I've protected you long enough, Andrew. Maybe it's time for honesty." Brittany froze. Her fake smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. "Protected him from what?" she asked, her voice getting sharper. Andrew shot me a desperate look, but I was tired of secrets. Tired of watching my son shrink under this woman's criticism while I bankrolled their entire life. "The truth about who's been keeping you from losing your house," I said calmly. Brittany's eyes darted between Andrew and me. She set down her shopping bag slowly, like a predator preparing to pounce. "What truth?" I started to speak, but Andrew interrupted. "Mom, please." But Brittany had heard enough. She knew something was wrong. I could see the calculation in her eyes, the same look she got when she was about to explode at Andrew. She knows, I realized. She might not understand everything yet, but she knows. That night Andrew texted me, "She knows something's up, won't stop asking questions." The next text came at 2 a.m. "She's going through all our papers, says she's auditing our finances." Then at 6 a.m., "Mom, she found old bank statements. She's figured out the payment amounts don't match our income. She's furious." I didn't hear from him for 3 days. When he finally called, he sounded exhausted. "She exploded, Mom. I've never seen her so angry. She accused me of lying, of making her look stupid, of betraying her trust." "What did you tell her?" "Everything. I had to. She was threatening to leave and take Ellie. And she packed a suitcase, threw it in her car along with Ellie's things, said she needed to think about whether she could trust me anymore." My blood ran cold. "Where did they go?" "Her sister's place, I think. Mom, she's talking about custody. She says I'm financially irresponsible and she can't trust me to provide for Ellie." The irony was staggering. Brittany was threatening custody based on financial instability while living in a house I'd been paying for. "Andrew, we need to talk. In person, tonight." Andrew arrived at my house looking like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair a mess. This wasn't the confident young man I'd raised. "She's not just threatening custody, Mom. She's already talked to a lawyer. Says she's going to prove I'm an unfit father because I can't provide financial stability." I poured him coffee with hands steadier than I felt. "Andrew, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Are you ready to fight for your daughter?" "Of course, but..." "No buts. Are you ready to tell the complete truth in court? About the job loss, about my help, about everything?" He nodded slowly. I walked to my home office and returned with a thick folder. "This contains 5 years of documentation proving I've been paying your mortgage. Bank statements, wire transfers, correspondence with the mortgage company, everything." Andrew's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. "There's more," I continued. "I've already spoken with Margaret Torres about family law. She's recommended an excellent attorney who specializes in custody cases. Mom, I can't afford. I can, and I will. But Andrew, if we do this, there's no going back. The truth about our family's finances is going to come out. Everything." Andrew looked at the folder, then at me. "You do that? Even after everything?" "I'd do anything to protect Ellie, and you." The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. Unknown number. "Linda Coleman? Yes? This is Dr. Patricia Mills, administrator at Westside Family Clinic. I believe your daughter-in-law works here?" My stomach dropped. "Yes. We're conducting an internal audit of our billing procedures. Some discrepancies have come to light in our insurance reimbursement accounts. I was wondering if you might have time to speak with us." I remembered Brittany's phone, the MedReimburse notifications. "What kind of discrepancies?" "The kind that suggests someone has been manipulating patient billing records. We'd prefer to discuss this in person." 2 hours later, I sat in Dr. Mills's office while she explained what they'd found. Brittany had been processing legitimate insurance claims, but reporting lower amounts to the insurance companies and pocketing the difference. "It's been going on for at least 2 years, Dr. Mills said. We're talking about nearly $30,000 in fraudulent charges. What happens now? We've suspended her pending investigation. If the evidence holds up, we'll be pressing charges." That evening, my doorbell rang. Brittany stood on my porch with Ellie, 2 suitcases behind her. "Can we stay the night?" she asked, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I let them in for Ellie's sake." My granddaughter ran to me with her usual enthusiasm, unaware of the adult drama swirling around her. "Grandma Linda, Mommy says we're having a sleepover." "That's right, sweetheart. Are you hungry?" While Ellie ate dinner, Brittany sat at my kitchen table looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. Gone was the sharp-tongued woman who'd humiliated me at Thanksgiving. "Linda, I think I misjudged you," she said quietly. "I know things have been tense between us. Maybe we can work this out?" I recognized manipulation when I heard it, but I kept my voice neutral. "What exactly do you want to work out?" "Andrew told me about your help with the house. I had no idea. I'm grateful, really. Are you?" "Of course, and I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. I was stressed about work, and I took it out on you." "Work?" I wondered if she knew about the audit yet. "Brittany, let me ask you something. Do you think family should be honest with each other?" She nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. Honesty is so important." "Good, because there are some things we need to discuss." That night, after Ellie was asleep, I heard movement downstairs. Brittany was in my home office, going through my desk drawers. I watched from the hallway as Brittany rifled through my filing cabinet. She pulled out the trust documents I'd signed with Margaret Torres, her face growing paler as she read. "Looking for something?" I asked, stepping into the room. She spun around, clutching the papers. "Andrew's inheritance? It all goes to Ellie?" "That's right. You can't just cut me out. I'm his wife." I walked to my desk and sat down calmly. "Brittany, you've stolen from your employer. You've humiliated me in front of my family. You've threatened to take my granddaughter away from her father. What exactly do you think you deserve?" Her face twisted with rage. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can. Dr. Mills called me yesterday. They found the evidence of your insurance fraud. You're going to be arrested." Brittany's hands shook as she processed this. You reported me?" "I didn't have to. Fraud investigations tend to find their own evidence. I have nowhere else to go." I looked at her, really looked at her. For 5 years, this woman had made my son feel worthless while living off my money. She'd called me cheap while stealing from sick patients. "You have a choice, Brittany. Get help. Fix your life. Be the mother Ellie deserves, or lose access to all of us permanently. You can't keep me from my daughter. Watch me." 3 days later, I called a family meeting. Margaret Torres was there as my attorney. Andrew brought a custody lawyer. Brittany arrived with a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I laid out everything on my dining room table. The mortgage payments, the trust documents, the evidence of Brittany's embezzlement, and Andrew's signed statements about their real financial situation. "Here are the facts," I began. "For 5 years, I've paid Andrew and Brittany's mortgage. Total, $192,000. I'm listed as co-owner on their house deed. I've established a trust for Ellie's future that neither Andrew nor Brittany can touch." Brittany's lawyer looked stunned. "Mrs. Coleman, this is highly irregular." "What's irregular is someone stealing from cancer patients while calling their benefactor cheap," I replied. I turned to Brittany. "You have 2 choices. Accept supervised visitation with Ellie while you rebuild your life, or fight this in court and lose everything. This is insane. You can't just control everyone's life." "I'm not controlling anything. I'm protecting my granddaughter from a mother who commits fraud and a father who's been too ashamed to seek help." Andrew spoke up, his voice stronger than I'd heard in years. "Brittany, take the deal. Please, for Ellie." "You can't just cut me out," she screamed. Margaret Torres slid a document across the table. "Actually, she can, and she has." A week later, the sheriff arrived at 423 Maple Street with an eviction notice. As co-owner of the property, I had the legal right to reclaim it, especially since the mortgage was in default. Andrew called me, crying. "Mom, they're making us leave." "I know, honey, I'm the one who filed the eviction." Silence. "You can stay, Andrew, but only if you agree to my conditions: counseling, financial planning, complete honesty about our family situation." "What about Brittany?" "She made her choice when she chose pride over family." That afternoon, I drove to Maple Street and watched as Andrew loaded his belongings into a truck. Brittany stood on the sidewalk, screaming at anyone who would listen about illegal evictions and family betrayal. Andrew approached my car window. "I'm going to stay at Mike's place for a while, figure things out." "The offer stands, Andrew. Whenever you're ready." "I know, Mom. I need to do this myself first. I watched him drive away, then got out of my car and walked to the front door. I pulled out my key, the same key I'd had since I co-signed the mortgage 5 years ago, and opened the door to my house. The next day, I had the locks changed. Over the next 6 months, Andrew slowly rebuilt his life. He got a full-time job at a local warehouse, enrolled in community college business classes, and started seeing a therapist. Every Thursday evening, he came to my house for dinner with Ellie. At first, these visits were tense and formal. But gradually, Andrew began to relax. He started talking about his goals, his mistakes, his hopes for the future. "I'm learning about budgets and credit scores," he told me one evening. I never realized how much I didn't know about money. Ellie would play in the backyard while we talked, her laughter floating through the open windows. She was thriving with the stability, even though she missed her mother. Then the call came. Andrew's phone rang during dinner, and Brittany's name appeared on the screen. "She's been arrested," Andrew said after hanging up. "The clinic pressed charges. She tried to forge more reimbursement records while out on bail." I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. "How do you feel about that?" "Honestly, free. For the first time in years, I feel free." 2 weeks later, Andrew asked if he could move back into the Maple Street house. "I want to pay rent," he said. "Market rate. I want to do this right." I smiled. "We'll work something out." Brittany's trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged documents, manipulated computer records, witness testimony from clinic staff. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution. From jail, she called me collect. I almost didn't answer. "Linda, please, I have no one else to call." Her voice was different, smaller, defeated. "What do you want, Brittany?" "I lost my nursing license. My lawyer says the restitution will bankrupt me. My sister won't return my calls." I sat in my quiet kitchen looking at the framed photo of Ellie on my windowsill. "You lost more than your license, Brittany. You lost your family. I know I made mistakes, but you didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You chose to steal from sick people. You chose to humiliate me while I paid your bills. You chose pride over family. I can change. Maybe you can, but that's something you have to prove to yourself first. What about Ellie? She needs her mother." I thought about my granddaughter, who'd stopped asking about mommy's business trips and started sleeping through the night again. Ellie needs a mother who puts her first. When you become that person, we'll talk. I hung up and deleted her number from my phone. 6 months later, Andrew stood in front of a family court judge seeking full custody of Ellie. I sat in the gallery, watching my son speak with confidence I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. "Your Honor, I take full responsibility for my past financial mistakes, but I've completed parenting classes, financial counseling, and individual therapy. I have stable employment and housing. Most importantly, I have a support system that puts Ellie's welfare first." The judge reviewed the case files. Brittany's criminal conviction, Andrew's rehabilitation efforts, my character witness statement. "Mr. Coleman, given the circumstances and your ex-wife's current incarceration, I'm granting you full physical and legal custody of your daughter, with supervised visitation rights for Mrs. Coleman upon her release." Andrew's voice cracked as he spoke to the court. "Your Honor, I want to publicly thank my mother, Linda Coleman. She saved my family when I couldn't save myself. She protected my daughter when I wasn't strong enough to protect her. She gave us everything when we deserved nothing." I wiped away tears as Andrew walked toward me. In the hallway, he hugged me tight. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Through the courthouse windows, I watched Brittany's transport van pull away. She looked smaller in her orange jumpsuit, staring straight ahead. She was alone now, just like she'd made me feel that Thanksgiving Day. Today, I'm renovating the house on Maple Street. Andrew and Ellie live there now, but I visit every day. We're painting Ellie's room pink, her favorite color, and installing new bookshelves in the living room. Ellie helps me plant flowers in the front garden, her small hands carefully placing seeds in the soil. "Will these grow big, Grandma Linda?" "If we take care of them, they will." Last week, I framed a picture of Ellie riding her bicycle and hung it in the hallway. Underneath, I installed a small brass plaque that reads, "For the future." Andrew has started paying me rent, not market rate, but what he can afford while rebuilding his credit. More importantly, he looks me in the eye when he speaks. He stands up straight. He's become the man I always knew he could be. Sometimes people ask if I'm bitter about losing so much money on their mortgage. They wonder if I regret helping a family that didn't appreciate me. But they don't understand. I was never paying for a house. I was investing in my son's redemption and my granddaughter's future. Brittany called me cheap at Thanksgiving. She thought being cheap meant buying store-brand stuffing and counting pennies. She was wrong. I never gave anything cheaply, especially love. Love is the most expensive gift you can give, and I spent it wisely. Every dollar was worth it.